it's not about putting a happy face sticker on an empty gas tank. You will run out of gas, which basically means it's not about denying what you're feeling, right? And just walking around, I'm happy. It's not about faking it, but it's about unpacking. Where am I focused? Noticing, how does a thought feel inside of me? It just doesn't feel good. It's not true. It's one little step at a time. It's gently course correcting when you feel it's kind of like that old AA story about going down.
Welcome to the podcast, The Whole and Complete Woman, where we provide practical tips and strategies for achieving your health, wealth, and relationship goals and desires. Yes, I said desires because God does not put desires in our heart just to tease us. So it's important to me that you are empowered with the tools and resources to not only fulfill your goals, but to create a life you love and create a legacy, because the people who come after us, they are depending on us to pave the way. So I congratulate you for being here. Not only will today's content help your future self, but also those that come behind us. And that looks different for everyone, which I love. So let's go ahead and dive into today's topic. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce my guest. Today we have here Prem Glidden. Hello, Prem. Thank you for being here.
Hi, Alicia. Thank you so much for having me.
I am so excited for the listeners to hear from you today. So a little bit about Prem is that she is an international love, life, and relationship coach who has successfully supported hundreds of men and women all over the world to release their painful patterns and stories of the past and become who they would need to be in order to create the healthy and happy love and also be able to create the life that they are deeply desiring. So she is a certified feminine power coach, a calling in the one coach, and a conscious uncoupling coach, and has been a teacher of yoga and meditation for over 40 years. She is also the best-selling author of Opening to Possibility, Becoming Available to Love and Be Loved. So I am so excited to have Prem here. I have personally worked with Prem for a very long time. I began working with Prem when I was going through mediation and separation from my former spouse. And I remember our first call, I was in the car and I was crying. It was already scheduled. And I was in a program doing a course, working on like consciously uncoupling from my former spouse at that time and just working through everything that was happening. And I was in the car and headed to a meeting and I was just crying. And she just really helped center me in a place of truth and love and helped me all the way through that mediation process, going through the divorce, finding the patterns and the ways that I was showing up in relationships, started dating again. And then also, as you know, I'm remarried, happily remarried to my true love. And Prem has been there all along the way through my miscarriage, through having a new baby, starting new businesses. So I know that she is a phenomenal woman, and I am so excited for you all to hear from her today. So Prem, we want to hear about you. So can you tell us about your journey and what inspired you to really help women discover their relationship with themselves and opening to the possibilities of love?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I think like most of the women listening, I was successful in my life. I had good friendships and I was a teacher and had a lot of places in my life that were working, but I was really deeply confused as to why I could not seem to create the kind of love and partnership I wanted in my life, and had really no idea, honestly, at my part in creating that. And it wasn't, because it's not about anybody else. People behave badly. They do what they do. But it's the inner journey of understanding, myself. And so my journey led me to my mentor, Catherine Woodward Thomas, who wrote the best-selling book Calling in the One. And through my work with Catherine, I really began to understand my own patterns, my patterns of invisibility, my story about being a disappointment, and the strategies that I had learned that separated me from the very connection and love that I wanted, and I had no idea. I mean, we don't do this on purpose. I always say, we don't know what we don't know. And I didn't know. And once I began to understand and begin to show up inside what was actually a deeper truth about me. And then I did that. I took that inner journey and I did the work, and I understood, well, what's actually true about me, that I am a blessing to anyone that gets to love me, and to really anchor in knowing that. I met my beloved at 62. So I was older than probably many of the people listening, but I figured it out. And the freedom of the experience, the freedom of knowing that other people were not my source. They were not my source of my happiness. They were not my source of my lovability or my worthiness. The freedom of that allowed me to actually create healthy, happy love with my beloved. And we got married 4 years ago. We met about 10 years ago now and got married 4 years ago. So, once I found that freedom, I just thought, I have to share this with anyone who will listen, because I understand the pain of feeling stuck. I understand the pain of not understanding why I'm getting what I'm getting. So that's really, for me, has always been the inspiration, because I know how painful it is to be there. And I know the freedom when you really understand the truth of who you are and all that is possible for you.
Yeah, there's so much freedom in that, in those patterns that show up. I know for me, just as similar, and many of the women that are listening to this, I struggled because I was a single mom. And then part of me felt broken, like, okay, now I've got these kids, and will anyone want to be with me? And, it was really recognizing my part and how I was showing up in relationships, and, what I was co-creating. So can you explain how women can recognize for themselves and the patterns that are present and change destructive relationship patterns?
Oh, absolutely. It starts with, I love the word curiosity, right? Because there's no growth in shame. We do the best we know how to do when and as we know better, we do better, right? And so it's, to me, the first step is that curiosity that, I remember that moment of going, common denominator, me. Okay. Good news, right? Because I can't do anything about any of them. And so I think it's just a gentle, a loving curiosity of noticing, what is your pattern? How does love show up for you? How does relationship show up for you? And then being curious, like noticing that, like for some people, it's kind of like a pattern of, one I hear a lot is, I just tend to draw in men who don't ever want to make a commitment to me. Right. And so to me, the curiosity is, okay, well then what's that about for me? What are the ways that I might not be committed to myself? Right. You just want to be curious, right? Because it's always an inner journey. So to me, that's the beginning. And I think a really important piece is to have a loving relationship with that part of you, to understand that whatever you're experiencing, whatever your strategy has been, there's a reason. There's a part of you that figured out how to survive at a time where she didn't know how to do it any other way. And she was really brilliant. But what happens is, we form these strategies as children, right? We form strategies, and it's not about blaming anybody else. Sometimes it could be as simple as a mother goes to work and a child makes that mean, well, I must not matter and I must not be important to her because she wouldn't go. And all she's doing is trying to put food on the table for her child. And so, but children make meaning because they don't have the ability to make empowered meaning of the know, well, who somebody else's being is about them, not about me. And children are they're really black and white. It's either, we all know that, right? If we have children, like they either love you or they hate you. There's really not a lot of gray there. And so it's realizing that we formed brilliant strategies when we're young. And yet, as we become adults, the very strategies that protect us when we're little separate us from the very love, the very connection we want. And so I think it begins with just that gentle curiosity of, what seems to be the pattern? What am I noticing is the pattern for me? And to be compassionate with that part of you and understand there's a reason. There's a reason you form that strategy. There's a reason, because then you can begin to be curious, right? And look, it's an inner journey, and it is helpful to work with someone to help you, because it's not always easy to see. But if, sometimes I get it. It's not always affordable for someone to do that. But even that gentle curiosity of just being willing to self-reflect without going into shame, being willing to self-reflect without going into blame, but just.
Yeah. When you were talking, it reminded me of one of the things, and just through your work and working with you, I was able to really kind of stand in my power or be very resourced, even when meeting my husband, because one of my patterns went all the way back to like 7th grade. And there was a boy in my class that basically I came down and I sat down in my seat in class, and he was the cute, popular boy. And he was like, "Hey, Alicia." And I turned around like, "Oh, okay. He's talking to me." And he was like, "Do you want to go out with me? Like be my boyfriend, be my girlfriend?" And I was like taken back, because I was kind of like a little nerdy. I had these big glasses. And I was definitely in a school that I was not like everyone else. And I turned around, I was kind of, like, okay, like looking like, okay. And he was like, "I'd never go out with you." And then all the kids around me just laughed. But it took some inner work and, doing these different practices to realize that I was carrying that into other relationships later in life, and even in the type of men that I would avoid. So I tended to choose men who needed more mothering, or I could be their teacher or their coach, but no one that I ever felt like could actually like dominate over me, or was, that person that could do those types of things. And I remember when I met my husband, we sat down, it was on the beach, and I sat down next to him, and, we're just having small chat. And he's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I'm a doctor." And, at that time, I did a lot of work in pharmaceutical research. And then asked him what he did. And he was like, "Oh, I'm an attorney." And, he went on. And normally I would probably create some kind of like more of a defensive type of interaction with men, like more like it just wouldn't turn out well. Normally, I don't know exactly all of the things, but through your work, that's helped me. Just sharing that story. And then, but even after marrying my husband, I remember there being a time where he would get quiet. He's more of an introvert. So he would get quiet, and I would start getting a little nervous. Let's say there was maybe something going on in the house, or, just like normal kind of little marriage things. And he'd start getting quiet, and I would start literally feeling like I needed to leave. Like, I got to go. I got to get out of here. I got to run. Like, me and the girls, we got to go. What have I done? And I realized at one point that when the men in my life get quiet and they get silent, they eventually get violent. And my husband's never done anything at all. He's never been violent with me. He's never raised his voice at me. But that was popping up for me. And I look at it more of a gift that there was a place for me to be able to heal. So, Prem, can you tell us a little bit about the 8-year-old driving the car, or tell us about that concept and how that can show up and work in women's life? And she may be 12, she may be 13, or tell us about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just like utilizing the story that you just told, the first thing that you know is it's just it's a part of you, it's not the all of you, and that there's a part of you feeling something. And I think that is often what the issue that people have is like learning to honor the feeling without buying into the story, right? And because there's a part of you that had a feeling, right? In that moment, she felt scared. It was real for her. She felt scared. She had an experience, when she was young, and she felt scared. And yet what happened is then from being scared, she developed a whole story about men and the lack of safety with men, and which of course made her feel like, well, then I've got to go, right? And so, but when you were able, right, it's realizing, okay, so she, like you said, she's 9 years old. And so, that's what you want to do, right? You want to tune in, right? You want to notice, well, what are you feeling, love? And just be really, so that, you can feel her. She's telling you she's scared, and you want to notice, where is that feeling in your body? And just breathe with it. Not the story, just because that's what she didn't have, right? She didn't have somebody because, parents are busy. It's not that people didn't love her, but they didn't know what she needed, and she didn't know how to ask for what she needed. And so she was alone with that fear. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to be present and hold that part of you with love and breathe with her. Ask her how old she is. And I asked, she told me I'm 9, right? And so, it's you just being with her and breathing with her and giving her love, right? Giving her that love and honoring her and nothing more, right? Letting her know, honey, I'm right here and I hear you. You're not trying to fix her. She's not broken. She's honestly scared, right? And so what you're realizing, because what often happens, as you said, is you've got a 9-year-old, and when you buy into the story in the worldview of a 9-year-old, it's kind of like she's grabbing the wheel of your car, and suddenly you have a 9-year-old dominating your life. And so it's like you want to let her know, honey, I understand, I hear you, right? First step, you always have to acknowledge her. She needs to feel heard, because then you're building trust. This is really between you and you, right? And so as you build trust with her, if you let her know I'm here, then you can tell her, you know what? I'm going to buckle you up in the seat next to me, my love, because I'm going to drive, right? And because then as you come back into the adult, you have access, right? You have access to the conversation that says, wait a minute, this is Brandon, honey. This is Brandon, and he's never raised his voice. He's never yelled at us. He's never raised a hand to us, honey. And you got to tell her, you got to let her know, I have a lot of wisdom. I have a lot of experience. I have a lot of information we didn't have then. And I want you to know you can trust me. I've made a good choice here. I have vetted this man. I have really let him show me who he is. And I know that he's someone that I can trust, and we are safe here, right? Because it's really you. She needs to trust now that you are making decisions that are safe for her, that you are making decisions, because she doesn't want to drive. She just needs to trust that you can.
Rebuilding that trust is something that you've really taught me to do. Because it's almost like I've had to tell her, like, okay, and admit, like, okay, I have made some decisions with men in the past that may have put me in situations, and things like that, but let her know, like, yes, okay, we've learned, we're doing this differently. Like you said, we vetted this man, we collected lots of data. We didn't just jump into this relationship, and, we're safe, and then reminding her of the truth, like, you are safe and you are loved and he loves you, you know. It's just such good work that you do. It's been so transformative in my life. I hear you talking a bit on it. I want to go a little deeper. It's one thing that you do talk about in your book, and it's a concept that I absolutely love, because for me, working with women with hormonal imbalances, lowering stress levels is a big part of my program and the work that I do with women. And oftentimes women just look at that as like self-care, relaxing, doing things, trying to decrease stress. But tell us, what's the difference between self-care, self-love, and self-compassion?
No, absolutely. Well, what you described, I would call more self-care. It is. I mean, people say to me all the time, I take baths, I get massages, I take walks and all of that. But to me, self-love is accepting all the parts of you, right? Warts and all. We all have them, right? It's being willing to say, yeah, sometimes, no, sometimes I'm a little cranky, or sometimes I'm a little this, or, right? It's just accepting all the parts of you with love and with compassion, which is where you say, like, that self-compassion is, again, letting go of the criticism. I used to call her my Judge Judy, right? Right? That inner critic, right? And so to me, self-compassion is silencing that inner critic, is smiling at her and being very self-forgiving, not being right, not being judgmental of yourself, of giving yourself room, of not expecting yourself to be perfect. That is not here to, right, we're not here to be perfect. We're here to grow and learn and expand, and right, and we, it's like I always say, if a child falls down and that's learning to walk, you don't say get up, dummy, you say good job. But we're so critical of ourselves, and to me it's like, hey, you tried. Even if you think you said it wrong, I had that happen recently where I said something and I thought maybe I saw something, right, that felt like maybe they didn't love what I said. And I felt it. We're human. You are going to get triggered. I don't care who you are, how much work you've done. And so for me, what comes up is some shame, like I got it wrong, right. And so I just breathed with her and I just listened to her. And over time, I was able to get to, you know what, honey, maybe we did. And that's okay too, because we didn't mean to, and it's okay, right? It's almost like giving, so that to me is that self-compassion of giving yourself room to make mistakes, to fall down and say, you know what, sometimes I fall down, but guess what? I get up.
Yes. Yep.
I get up.
Yeah, I love that. For the listeners and those that are watching, Prem works with a lot of my clients. So our work very much goes hand in hand, because I know that the things that go on inside of us emotionally really do show up in our bodies physically as well. So it's so important. And I love what you just said, because sometimes I find as women, and like you said, even with myself, like where it may turn into where I'm shaming myself, sometimes women are like, well, I should be over this by now. Like this should be done. Like, why is this still triggering me? Or why am I still dealing with this? What would you say to a woman who maybe has had some trauma happen, or just things in life? Like you said, it's not always something traumatic that we're carrying around, but it's something that impacted us. What would you say to a woman who is feeling a little shame and just, wishing that she was already healed, like the healing was done?
Yeah. Well, one thing, why questions are very shaming, right? Because they're kind of circular. They don't really. So that's why, to me, you always just want to be curious. And some of it is, look, faith is a choice, right? And some of it is stepping into that trust and that faith that things are unfolding in their perfect timing, and to trust, right? To stand in that sense of faith. And I know for most of us, we can all look at our life and find places where life has supported us, where life has been there for us. And there's always a choice, right? There's a choice of what will I focus on? And what you focus on gets bigger. And that's where I always say law of attraction is kind of, it's kind of that bugaboo, because it's like gravity. It exists. What you're either doing it intentionally or you're creating by default, but it is active. It is an active universal law. And so it's realizing what you focus on, the story that you're willing to tell yourself. I did a workshop few years ago about the idea about thoughts and the power of our thoughts. And there was literally a scientist who did work that he called them ants, automatic negative thoughts. And he said that most of us, 70 to 80%, so we're not alone, of our thoughts are negative, whether it's self-critical, subject, the why and all of that. And it literally stimulates a part of the brain that creates depression. So you're not imagining it. When you focus on those negative thoughts, it is physiologically not serving you. And yet positive thought has the opposite effect, where it stimulates the part of the brain that releases that oxytocin, that releases the hormones that are very, right? The dopamine, the I forget the name of them, but
all those good hormones, those neurotransmitters,
right, all
all of
those
those
good
things.
hormones,
Yes.
and happiness
Yep.
hormones, that support us and that love us. And so it's just when you realize sometimes you just have to sometimes get choosy. Sometimes you just can't get clarity. And you know what? In that moment, I always say, go take a walk, put on some music and dance it out. Focusing on something where you just can't get to where you can't feel good when you focus on it, not the time. You'll figure it out. You will get there, but it's like you're getting on a train to Suffering Town and you're wanting to get to happy Joyville, and you're not going to get there. Sometimes you have to just say, I don't need to figure this out today. I don't need to figure this out today. Right? It's just, I always figure it out. I always do. Today's not the day. I'm going to go take a walk. I'm going to take a hot bath. I remember spending hours, listen to something that inspires you. To me, it's always that inside job. And so if you're feeling, and those feelings are real, do what you can do to soothe yourself, to honor what you're feeling, but to create a practice in your life that does uplift you, that brings you back to faith. A morning practice, whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, listening to different teachers that remind you about who you are. You trying to take action or find solution before you are in alignment with your spirit, with yours, it doesn't work. That's the only reason. People say to me, I can't. I'm just saying, no, the only reason you're not finding it is that you're not looking in the direction of where it is.
Yep. I love that. And just being in alignment with like who we are and source and all of those things is so important. It reminds me, tell me a little bit about what you teach around when to say yes and when to say no to things. How do we know?
Well, I have to give credit to Alan Cohen. I got it from him. But I always say, to me, the bottom line is if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no.
Yep.
Right? And something I know you and I have talked about as well is, to me, that comes down to learning to trust your own guidance, right? Because for many of us, we were told as children, and, mostly because somebody wanted us to do what they wanted us to do. So something didn't feel right to us, but we were told, no, you're thinking about that wrong. And so over and over again, we were questioned as to what felt right to us. Our vision, our perception of things was doubted. And so, we grow up to be adults that don't trust our own guidance. Yeah. And that is to me, that is our relationship with God, with universe, with source, right? It's that indicator. That's the beauty of who we are. It's like we're always guided. And when something doesn't feel good inside you, it's an indicator. It's a message to me from source. It's guidance saying, I'm thinking about this in a way that isn't truth and isn't serving me. Because when I think about something that is serving me and that is truth, I feel good. Yeah. I feel good. I feel inspired, right? And it's beginning to trust that guidance system and to know. And until it's a hell yes, then it's a hell no. And if it's supposed to be a hell yes, you will get there. But it comes back to, but you want to wait for that alignment, right? Because making a decision that you don't feel good about or taking an action that you don't feel good about, it's just never a good idea.
Yeah. That is so, so true. I am so mindful to really check in with myself. And sometimes there's even just small things of, am I going to go to this conference or this event or, or even trying to teach my children, with them picking out their clothes, that they wear. I'm just like, well, what does it bring you joy? How do you feel like trying to instill in them that they have a choice, one, and then like, yeah, how does it feel? Does it like light you up? Are you like, yes, this is what I want? Or are you kind of like, yeah, that's something more mom's just wants me to wear, um, but just trying to do that in my own life and then also doing it with the girls, um, and learning that from you has been super, super helpful. A lot of the women that are listening to the show, they have busy, lots of roles in life. Oftentimes they're mothers, they're wives, they're professional women, with, very full schedules in life. What strategies do you recommend for women trying to achieve this work-life balance?
I think first of all, you have to believe it's possible. That's the big one, I think, for most women. It's actually believing I can. I always say I can and I will, right? It's like really anchoring in that because see, you can't solve a problem, right, at the level of problem. I think that was Einstein, right? And it's right. So when you're focused on problem, you can't see solution. And so it doesn't mean you don't acknowledge, okay, what I'm feeling, what I don't want is that I'm feeling really out of balance in my life. Okay, well, what do I want? Well, I really, I'm excited about my work. I'm excited about my, I want it all. And how do I do that? How do I find that balance? And, look, in all honesty, sometimes it is going to be a little, a choice. And I always say, if you make a choice, you want to line up with that choice and feel good about that choice. But it's knowing that you can. And to me, the key always is to begin your day with a practice that centers you. Just tune in and take that time and realize, do it from a place of choice. To me, that is the biggest piece because sometimes people will make, you realize you're going and you're doing something, but it feels like I have to. It feels like a should. I always say never, you don't want to should on yourself, right? And so if you're going to make a choice, line up with it and understand it's a choice. I'm here because I choose to be. And get in line, really give yourself permission to think, what is my bigger intention? It doesn't mean forever. Maybe, look, you have a new baby, well, she's a year old now, right? But you have a small child. It may be for this last year, you needed to think about that. You were making a choice of, I'm going to make a choice because I want to be a little more hands-on with my child. It's not forever. It's just, this is what I'm choosing. I think that's all of it. People get very caught up in the, it's an or, right? Like, it's an or. And I always say, no, it's an and. It's an and right now I'm going to choose to be a little bit more of mom because that's important to me and I don't want to miss this time in his life. And I'll know when it's the right time to focus here and to know that, and help will come, right? It's like when you believe I can and I will, help will show up, balance comes. And when you feel out of balance, stop and breathe and be curious because it's always an inside job. What am I believing here that's having me be out of balance, and really come back to your own inner intention. What is it that matters most to me? Right. And you feel that relief. It's like you literally want to feel the release in your body.
I absolutely love that. I know that you have helped me with that in many areas of my life and really learning, that. And it's kind of one of the things that the podcast is about. When I was preparing for this, I was like, oh, this is so inspired by so much of my work with you and women really being able to have it all and not feeling like this like, I got to do this or this, and that it can be both, and that we can really create lives that we love. But it's so, so, so important to get in alignment with ourselves and with our truth. And, when we're feeling off, like you said, be curious, like what's there, because those little shifts that we make can make really big changes, for the good in our life. It can really create this life that we really want for ourselves. So I just appreciate you so much for that. So a lot of the women that listen to this podcast, love is always the thing. Like people, it's romanticized. It's on TV. I was watching something. My husband and I had gone to, I forgot which resort it was, but we saw a commercial and it was like every single clip was like of love, like just this juicy, like just delicious, like love. Like that's how they were advertising this resort basically. And so, it's just something people want. I'm a big believer that we came here to love and be loved. And that was one of my truths that I had to learn for myself to really ground myself in, is that I'm here to love and be loved. Um, for our listeners and the women that are wanting to create more love in their life, whether they're already, have a partner, or maybe they're single, they're dating, or maybe they've given up on dating altogether. Can you tell us a bit about how our relationship with ourselves influence our romantic relationships and the partners we attract? Go a little deeper into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, you can't receive from another what you aren't able to give to yourself. And so, you want to, again, it's that curiosity of that belief because, and one of the things that I say to clients probably a lot is loving other people doesn't leave you out. Right. And that is so huge because most of us, especially women, it's kind of almost ancestral, the idea that, for many years, women were basically honored for either for their beauty or their ability to serve. Right. And so certainly generationally, we have continued to evolve and change that. But, it can be confusing, because and what I find is that there's that voice that kind of convinces us that, well, this is noble. It's noble to put somebody else's feelings before mine. It's noble. It's self-sacrificing. And I find so many women are very confused by that. And it's again, it's not an or. That yes, most of us are loving. We're compassionate. We want to be, but it's realizing, what does it look like to love in a way that includes ourselves, right? That it doesn't have to be, well, I get to love you and honor you. And so, I think so much of it is you've got to start by kind of unpacking what your beliefs are about relationship, and so many people come to me and they say, that's what I want. I want to create this deep love and partnership. And then when I start speaking to them, I find out that their beliefs about being in a relationship pretty much means that they have to it's always about somebody else. And I get to have to lose myself. And I'm thinking, I'm like, well, then why would you want, if that's your belief about relationship? And so I think so much of it is cleaning all that up. Honestly, it's just really getting clear about knowing as an adult, because see, the thing is, we're still looking at through the worldview of those younger parts of us. They didn't have a lot of power. They couldn't, the people were who they were. They didn't have, but it's going, wait a minute, as an adult, as a woman now, I have a voice and I have a choice. No one disrespects me unless I make them the source of my self-respect. Right? I was born worthy. It's you've got to anchor in your own knowing first. You've got to know you were born. You're an expression of the divine. Everyone is, right? And so it's just knowing and really understanding that, and knowing I now as an adult, guess what? I have a voice and I have a choice. I don't have to say yes to anything that doesn't feel good to me. And I don't have to run from it. Like you were saying, I can communicate. I can understand, oh, wait a minute, I want to run. And maybe what actually I need to do is have a conversation with my husband where I share with him, right, what's coming up for me, where we talk it through. And then what you found, and I know you found, is that in that conversation, you actually had a partner that cared about what you had to say, that when you weren't showing up in shame or blame or any of the, and letting go of the who's right and who's wrong, because you're both always right. If you feel a certain way, you're right. But is the bigger intention to prove that you're right or to create love and connection? Yeah. Right. It's starting, for those that are really wanting to create love. The reason that I was so drawn at the time to the calling in the one work was that because it was about calling in myself. And I got that because the first time I spoke to Catherine, which was many years ago, she said to me, you don't even think it's possible to create the kind of love that you want. And I went, well, no, not really. I didn't have any evidence that existed. And she said something really profound to me. She said, well, then will you just commit to me that you won't be the reason why? Now, I didn't know what that really meant, really, except that being a person who was committed to doing my own work and on a spiritual journey, I said, that I can do. That I can do. And it's what allowed me to understand, the journey of loving myself, because I realized I hated that part of me that was whiny and needy. I didn't recognize myself when I got in relationships. And I'm thinking, I'm this, I'm a teacher and I'm this and I'm that. And she's whiny. And I realized that I was treating that part of me the same way she's always been treated and always felt treated. And so it's loving the parts of you. It's giving to yourself what you're wanting. And honestly, it's committing to be happy, to not use your relationship status as your criteria for success in life. That you are successful as a woman. You are a blessing to those that get to love you and be with you. And your beloved, he's looking for her. He's looking for the you that knows. And you get this because that you were there. And so, you were there. You knew who you were. And it doesn't mean there wasn't a journey, but you were able to connect and attract somebody at that level because you had done enough inner work to know your worthiness, to know what is actually true about you. So to me, that's it, right? You have to just know, and you have, somebody once said to me, what do you think was different for you before you met your husband? And I said, you know what? I just decided I was going to be happy and I was going to have an amazing life. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew. I didn't have a sense I was going to be alone forever. I don't think we didn't come here to be alone. It's like that decision. It says I didn't come here to be alone. I don't accept that as my fate, right? And you look around and think, okay, other people were, it's like you've got to anchor in that truth. And then just say, you know what? And on that journey, I'm going to appreciate sunrises and sunsets. I'm going to notice the beauty. I'm going to appreciate the people that I love. Because it begins to align you with happy, because you can't get to happy ending from a suffering journey. It defies law. It is not possible. So you got to come back and you've got to get in alignment with what's actually true about you, because I can tell every single one of you that's listening to this, I know who you are and I know what's possible for you. And you are amazing. You are amazing.
That was beautiful, Prem. I'm like, preach. While you were going, I'm like, oh my goodness. So for the listeners, I rewind, listen to that again. There was so much wisdom in what you just said. Sometimes, I don't think I've ever told you this, Prem, but I call you like my fairy godmother. I'm like, she just comes and like sprinkles all this magic in my life and like leads me and teaches me so many things. That was wisdom that you just dropped there. And yeah, rewind, listen to that, share that with your friends. um it's all so true. I don't even know what to ask you after that. That was so good, and I can see it in so many different areas of my life where, especially in love, the way that I was viewing myself, or my own. I realized that I had men that would dismiss my feelings or call me crazy, or all of these things. But then it was like I was doing the same thing to myself inside. I would have my feelings come up and I'd try to smush them down, like, oh, go away, or stop feeling that way, and I'd be very like shaming towards myself when I would pretty much have any emotion besides just being happy. you know and but then I was attracting men who kind of dismissed my feelings too, and my needs. So I had needs, but I wouldn't acknowledge my own needs. I wouldn't ask for the support that I needed. I wasn't even consciously looking and, even having that conversation with myself. What do I need? So then the men that I was calling in they were reflecting back, they were mirroring back to me the way that I was interacting with myself. And then there was, what did I just believe about men in general? And oftentimes it was that they're not available. So then I was choosing men that were either emotionally unavailable, physically unavailable, and they weren't there. So I just love how that work is all about that inner journey with ourselves. Um, this has been so good. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, I feel like I want to clarify something because, it's not about putting a happy face sticker on an empty gas tank. You will run out of gas, which basically means it's not about denying what you're feeling, right? And just walking around, I'm happy. It's not about faking it, but it's about unpacking. Where am I focused? Noticing, how does a thought feel inside of me? It just doesn't feel good. It's not true. It's one little step at a time. It's gently course correcting when you feel it's kind of like that old AA story about going down, the guy walks down a road and falls in a hole, and he walks down and walks around the hole and falls in, and then he walks down, stands there for a minute and falls in, and eventually he takes a different street. Right. And that's it. It's knowing. It's not about faking it. It's about knowing that it's an inner conversation with you, and to be honest about where you are, but to talk to her, not put a blanket over her or not stuff her like you were saying. It was like stuffing it down, but it's still there because we live in a vibrational universe. And so, and the universe is responding to our vibration. I always say, you can state an affirmation all day long. If you don't believe it, it's not doing you a darn bit of good, right? It just isn't. And so it's about being honest where you are, but with a commitment to feel a little bit better, to reach for that thought that feels a little bit better. And so one great tool is if you notice a thought and you're like, oh yeah, that's. So what might feel, so you reach for something that feels a little bit better. And you notice, does that feel better? Does that feel worse? Does that feel the same? If it doesn't feel better, then you want to reach for another thought. Sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's just like, you know what? I don't need to figure this out today. Okay. I felt some relief from that. All right. From there, I have a little access. Well, you know what? I always figure it out. A little bit more relief, right? You know what? Maybe I'll call Alicia. Maybe I'll call a friend. Maybe I'll call someone that I know will really hold space for me and always knows, right? It's that gentle one thought at a time because you've decided that you deserve to feel good. And you're not, I heard some said this way recently that I love. It's like not willing to let someone else take your heaven on earth. You're not willing to use someone else as your reason to not feel good. Because, I say that to people all the time. Someone else has to change in order for you to feel better.
It's a lot of power.
You're screwed. don't. You can't control
Yeah.
them. And so it's really reclaiming yourself and knowing, you know what, I'm the expert on me. I am the chooser for my life, right? It's like, there's going to be a choir. There's always a choir of those different voices and parts, but you are the choir director. So if you were a choir director, you wouldn't say, "Oh, you're terrible." You'd listen and you'd say, "There's a little lack of harmony here, and okay, let's reach for a little harmony." And so you're lovingly, because you're committed to feeling good. You're committed to being in alignment with your highest self, to being in integrity. I'm a client recently. I love that word. She said, "What I'm realizing is when I'm not in integrity with myself, it just doesn't feel good." And that is an indicator. So for her, that spoke to her, right? It was like, that's what it is. And being in integrity with herself really matters to her. So, it's finding your words, your language, because our words are powerful, and our words are our wands, right? They create. And so thoughts are powerful, and being as choosy about your thoughts as you are about the food that you eat or the clothing that you wear. And it, again, like I said, it's just a gentle, like, oh yeah, there you are. It's like that story with the two wolves. One is the grandmother is explaining to the child, and there's the white wolf that is sending loving thoughts, and the dark wolf that is kind of dark energy and all of that, and saying, and he says, well, which one do you listen to, right? Like, which one gets power? And she said, well, whichever one you feed. Right. And so it's feeding the good thoughts. It's feeding and knowing, and just gently saying, you know what, I'm just not going to go there, because it's not a matter of whether it's truth or whether it's right, because if it doesn't feel good, it isn't truth, and it is not serving you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just
the truth,
be gentle. And yeah.
Oh no, go ahead. I was just saying the truth sets us free. There is
Well,
freedom in that.
exactly. There is freedom, and freedom in just not, and look, you're married, and look, relationships are going to have contrast. They're going to have moments, but again, when you always come home to your deeper intention, right? Because you that's what you did. There was a part of you that wanted to run, but your deeper intention was just to be in connection with this man. You wanted to love him. You wanted to feel connected to him, not separate from him. And so, and yes, is it outside of who you knew yourself to be in the past? Yes. So it did feel a little risky. It did feel a little vulnerable. But what you got to find out, and what you already knew, is this person loves me. This person is a safe place for me. And he doesn't always know what I need. People tell me that all the time. It doesn't meet my needs. And I'm like, well, have you told him what you need? Well, he should just know. When somebody loves you, they know. No, they don't. They don't always know. They're not mind readers. And so making sure that if you let somebody know what you need, because if you need it and it matters to you, then it matters.
Yep. Oh, Prem, thank you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. This was so good. I'm going to re-listen to it myself. There is just so much wisdom in here. And you covered so many topics on just opening up to the possibility of love. So for those listening, make sure to go ahead and order her book. It's so good. Really takes you step by step through many of the things that we've talked about today. And, we've talked about a lot, those patterns and just how we are showing up, and really how to have that self love, that self compassion, all of those things that are so needed in creating a life that we love. So, Prem, do you have any closing thoughts or reflections on our discussion today, or just maybe even just like if there was one thing, that you would recommend for the women that are listening, what would that be?
I think just to be loving of yourself, right? To give yourself room, to be gentle, to begin to become aware of your self-talk, become aware of how you speak to yourself, or noticing, just little things like that are so helpful, right? Just lovingly, notice, where do you feel victimized? And rather than going into shame about it or blame about it, be curious. Be curious and allow yourself, right? Because to me, where you want to be is you want to live in possibility. You want to know, right? It's like, who am I being? Right? And just beginning to just that gentle noticing, when am I getting on the train to suffering town, and when am I choosing thoughts that love me, thoughts that and again, just that gentle, oh yeah, no, getting off that train, going to get onto this one, and really remembering the truth of who you are. And what I know, and I say this to clients all the time, the reason I know what's possible for you is because I'm kind of a miracle. And if I can do it, so can you. That's my message. If I can do it, so can you, because I'm being loved beyond anything, and that's really, the book is about that. It's actually the journey I took with one of my first clients, from looking for love in all the wrong places, going through the steps of self-love, of looking at her patterns, of beginning to have a relationship with her inner guidance system, of beginning to close that gap between where she was and where she wanted to be, to live in possibility, to, in her mid-40s, finding love beyond her possible dreams and having a beautiful daughter at 45. So, to me, that's what I would say. Take knowing. It's almost like, she can do it, so can I. I can and I will. Really feel that sense of possibility, because I promise you that whatever your heart's desires, you can have it. You just have to believe it, and you have to know it, and you have to trust it.
I love that.
Yeah. I love that.
Yes, whatever our hearts desire, because God does not put desires in our hearts to tease us. So, yes, if we can do it, because I've done it right alongside with your help, Prem. So, thank you
Absolutely.
so much. Tell us how can we reach you? Give us your contact information. Like, let us know, because I know the women listening here definitely want to get in contact with you. So tell them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the easiest way is to go to my website, which is just my name, premglidden.com. No space between Prem Glidden. And there is actually a free meditation there. It's called Opening to Possibility. It's about a 12-minute meditation. Feel free to download that. And my number, there's a contact form there, everything to get in touch with me. And I always offer a free 30-minute consult. So if you want to see if it feels like a good fit, just reach out and we'll schedule a 30-minute discovery call. You can talk to me about where you are. I can share with you what it would look like to work together. And if you feel inspired, my book's on Amazon, and, it's a great first step, to just seeing the journey in real life. This is a beautiful woman like all of us, who was also successful director, producer, writer, lovely inside and out like all of you, and just didn't understand why she couldn't create the love that she wanted, and just the journey that we took together. So, and so I would love to support any of you in creating the love and the partnership that your heart desires, or helping you find alignment in your life in anything that feels like it's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. So reach out. I would love to chat with you.
I'm so glad that you said that at the end, because I still work with Prem quite regularly. And I'm clearly married, but this is for women who may be looking for love and looking to call in the one, or attract the person that is their beloved, that is the person that they're desiring. But also for those of us that are married, all the things that we talked about today are important in continuing to create healthy, happy, loving dynamics in our relationships with our partners that we are with now, our children, our work relationships. Like it shows up everywhere. So I'm so glad that you said that. Yes,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Sometimes it's about consciously recoupling. Like you don't, I mean, I'm just working with a couple right now who had no idea how they were stuck in patterns that were not serving them. And they've been married a long time and they're finding love and partnership in a whole new way again. So all that is possible. It's like you don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
So,
Love it.
so reach out if I can support you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Reach out to Prem. We will link her contact information, her website, and her book down below wherever you're listening to this. And if you want to hear more from us and more guest experts that we're bringing on the topics of love, health, wealth, and career, we've got you covered. Okay. So if you're watching us on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. If you're listening on Apple Podcast or another streaming service, go ahead and follow us. I promise you, you won't regret it. And it really helps us out when you subscribe, when you like, when you do all the things, okay? So it helps get the word out about the information that we're sharing. And it can really help another woman as well. Okay. So, one of my goals in starting this podcast was to really create a community and connection. So, sharing this podcast, subscribing, liking, doing all the things, it really helps me in fulfilling on my life mission. So, thank you.